Thank you very much, Anna. I'm absolutely delighted to be here and to talk with you about this, the first topic in this panel, arbitration in smart contracts. And I thought that perhaps, perhaps we need a small refresher, a few seconds actually, to try and remind ourselves, or try and get our ideas clear about what is a smart contract. Ideas come to mind. It's digital. It's embedded in a program. A performance is automated. But can we not have a less abstract picture of what a smart contract is? And let's be very basic. A drink vending machine is a straightforward example of something that has all the characteristics of a smart contract. It is a smart contract, an old-fashioned one, if you want, before we knew the word. So when money is paid, an irrevocable action is set into motion, money is retained, and a drink is vended, right? So the transaction cannot be stopped in the middle of the process, and the terms are, if you want, embedded in the hardware and in the software that runs the machine. Another example, another example of smart contract, perhaps much modern one, is one that would work for a flood insurance policy. So this contract would be linked to an official feed of precipitation data, and as soon as a certain level of precipitation is met, the threshold, the policy automatically pays the claim. So with these examples in mind, I hope we have a better understanding of what smart contracts are, and we can read the criteria with more concrete images and references in our mind. So yes, smart contracts are digital, so they are in computer form, running programs. They are constituted of contractual clauses that are embedded as computer code in a software, and the performance is mediated by technological means. For instance, the payment or any other action is enabled by technology and rules-based operation. And finally, it's irrevocable, meaning that once initiated, the outcome cannot be stopped unless a condition for the outcome is not met. Right? So no human intervention. And I should add that smart contracts lie on a spectrum. So a smart contract can be entirely written in the code, or it could be a code that refers to a separate version in natural language, in plain English, for instance, or it could be a mix between the two, a hybrid. And today, smart contracts are implemented in platforms that are commonly known as blockchain, but the technical term is digital ledger technology. And do you know what digital ledger technology is? Do we all know? I'm not sure. It's more and more in the language. So let me just give you just a few words. What do we mean by this? By blockchain. So imagine a databases, right? And it's shared among a community of participants, and those participants are computers, and they are called nodes. So you get the vocabulary: blockchain, node, the participants. And when a party wants to execute or record a new transaction, a request is sent to the network, so a request is sent to the nodes, that will process it. And in practice, it's just a subgroup of participants that will determine whether the request is authentic, and if so, will validate it. And thereafter, the ledger is automatically updated with the new blocks. This one, when say you cannot change it, you can just add to it. And some of these platforms are able to run programs, and smart contracts use such programs. For instance, a blockchain may record ownership of digital currency, right? And a smart contract can include a code that automatically transfers an amount of this digital currency to another account on the blockchain on the occurrence of a specific event. For instance, a flood, right? Okay, so now we have the technique and the vocabulary, so we can turn to our question: what about arbitration? What about arbitration in smart contract? Is this a compatible partnership? Is this a desirable partnership? And my answer is, as you will hear, is yes. I think actually there's a lot for arbitration in smart contract. Perhaps not arbitration as we exactly know it now. It's some development, but it's certainly a possible area of development. So what I have in mind when thinking about this topic is a future where blockchain promises will come to reality. Which means that most goods, labor, and capital will be allocated through decentralized global platform. So think of decentralized eBay, decentralized R&B, but also decentralized issuance and transfer of securities, decentralized tracking of ownership of commodities for trade finance transactions, arbitraging energy, verification of passenger identity, ticketing, etc. So will dispute arise? Of course, dispute will arise, and we'll see together whether these disputes are specific and how new there might be, what are the new elements, and then we'll turn to the challenges that these disputes raise for dispute resolution mechanism and what type of clauses might be useful. So some tech person would like to think that with this blockchain technology there'll be no disputes anymore because everything is automatic. I think this is an illusion. There will be, I'm going to explain to you, there might be perhaps different, but there will still be disputes. Even you can think of the most simple smart contracts that I described as decentralized eBay. Even on decentralized eBay, it might very well be that the physical good is not going to be delivered. You can claim I didn't receive it. Or even if it's decentralized R&B and payment is done through the blockchain, very good. But still, you might find that the flat is not as shown on the picture. Right? And in addition to this sort of traditional disputes, I think there is a whole family of new disputes that are going to arise. Let me give you a few examples. In some jurisdictions, for a contract to be binding, it's necessary to know with sufficient certainty who are the parties. So there might be disputes about the binding nature of smart contracts. There might also be disputes arising from coding errors that will create unexpected performance issues. There might be discrepancies between coding and natural language version, sort of these differences within the contract or interpretation problem. Parties might want to terminate a smart contract. There might be a subsequent change of law that renders a smart contract illegal. And smart contracts might also perform on the basis of inaccurate data. So I think there are plethora of new types of disputes that will arise, and so there is really a need for robust dispute resolution system. And when we think of a dispute resolution system that fits a smart contract, there are a few things we need to think about, because the very nature of smart contracts actually create challenges that are quite new. And again, I'd like to take the time to think together with you of a few of them. First, as I described, smart contracts operate via distributed nodes, those computers that are all around the world. Well, we know that this might create difficulty to determine what is the governing law and jurisdiction. We know that international law, provides, great rules, but we also know that they are difficult to apply, and sometimes they are contradictory. So there is a great risk of satellite disputes to know what is the governing law and what is the competent jurisdiction. The first element. Second, there is challenges that are related to the fact that on the blockchain one can act under a pseudonym. So in those cases, it might be difficult to identify someone to actually bring a claim against. There might actually be an evidentiary difficulty in pinpointing the person who is responsible for the loss that is caused by bugs in the operating system, for instance. There are also challenges that are linked to the irrevocable nature of the transaction. Because imagine that a party is entitled to terminate the contract. Then the record no longer reflects the legal position, but it's still there. So this is also an issue. So because of these specific challenges, a procedure which is as bespoke as arbitration is actually very, very appealing and very, very necessary. It can help overcome the challenges I just mentioned. And so we can try and be more precise. How is it going to help to have a bespoke procedure, an arbitral bespoke procedure? One can imagine that parties may agree to refer disputes below a certain threshold to a central blockchain administrator, to delegate it, which has the power to determine disputes and insert remedial transactions into the blockchain as necessary. So it's like a sole arbitrator with the possibility to intervene into the blockchain. Well, how do you choose this administrator? So this is to be further thought about. But actually, technologists have already thought about that, and they've come up with a system that's called Kleros. And Kleros is a resolution dispute based on arbitration for smart contract, which refers dispute to arbitrators who are selected at random, and their decision is recorded in the blockchain. So I have 5 more minutes. Let me take the time perhaps to perhaps give you an example on that, so that you come up with this vision of arbitration 3.0. So imagine Alice is an entrepreneur based in France, and she hires Bob, who is a programmer based in Brazil. And she hires him on a P2P freelancing platform so that he can build a website for her company. So they agree on the price, they agree on the term and on the conditions, and Bob gets to work. But a couple of weeks later, when Bob delivers a product, Alice is not satisfied. And she argues that the quality of the work is not as high as she expected. And Bob replies, I did exactly what was in the agreement, but she's frustrated. And she also knows she cannot hire a lawyer for just a few $100s, and someone who is, halfway on the, quite very far away. So then, this sort of ad hoc arbitration process called Kleros would work the following way: thousands of miles away, for instance in Nairobi, Dimitrios. I don't think Dimitrios is a very Nairobian name, but give me another name, perhaps. Well, let's say John. There are Johns everywhere in the world. So John is a software developer, and in his free time, when he's on the bus, for instance, he acts as a decentralized arbitrator. So what happens? He gets on his phone, check on his phone Kleros app, and he says, we are looking for an arbitrator on this type of dispute, and you can apply to be a juror in this arbitrator. So they call it juror, but it's really being like an arbitrator, so a decision maker on the dispute. And so many people all over the world, Nairobi, the Caire, Rome, Berlin, Brazil, etc., will answer. And then through a random process, it's all based on game theory, through a random process, a few of them will be chosen to be the arbitrators. And actually, so they're not legally trained, but to make sure they do the best they can to solve the dispute, they actually have to bid some money in order to be chosen. Right? And money is reimbursed to them only if they are in the majority. So only if their decision is the same as the majority of the jurors. So all of this, again, is based on game theory, and this is a way to sort of push them to give the best solution they can. So once they have been selected, they can access the evidence, and they are given, for instance, 3 days to make a decision. And the form of the decision, you can only imagine this is quite simple disputes. There are 3 buttons. Alice should pay, Bob should reimburse Alice, and third option, Bob should be given another week to finish the job and polish it. Right. So this is a vision of what could be implemented. A variation on this is a situation where parties to a smart contract, just a few more words, to a smart contract could refer the dispute to arbitration, and a mechanism to allow an arbitrator as we know them better, but an arbitrator who would be empowered with sort of coding the award within the blockchain to enforce it right away. And next step, yes.
Thank you so much.